Hello, everyone. Welcome to our legislative briefing on the right to repair. We'll get started in a moment, give folks time to join. If you're just joining us, welcome to our legislative briefing on the right to repair. I'm going to wait one more minute and then we'll get started. I see more people are joining. Okay, it looks like the joining has slowed down a little bit, so we can go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our legislative briefing on right to repair. My name is Jen Engstrom. I'm the state director for CalPIRG, the California Public Interest Research Group. On behalf of our organization and our partners at Californians Against Waste and iFixit, we want to welcome you all and thank you for joining this opportunity to learn about the right to repair movement and the efforts that are underway here in California, led by Senator Susan Eggman. In a moment, I will hand it over to Senator Eggman to speak about the importance of making it easier for consumers to fix our stuff. But I also want to acknowledge the rest of our speakers. So we are joined today by Kevin O'Reilly. He is the Right to Repair Campaign Director for PIRG. Dan Salzberg, he is the Chief Counsel and Acting Chief of the Office of Technology, Research, and Investigation in the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the FTC. And then Aaron Persanowski, who is a law professor at the University of Michigan Law School. He is an expert in intellectual property and the author of the book, Right to Repair. And we are all here today because we believe that if you own something, you will be able to get it fixed. Unfortunately, repairing our phones, computers, refrigerators, and other electronics and appliances has become increasingly challenging as manufacturers restrict access to repair tools and information. When only the manufacturer or the authorized technician can fix your cell phone or your laptop, they can charge whatever they want or say that it can't be fixed and push you into buying new things. So right to repair laws, like this week's introduced SB 244, will bring more competition to the repair marketplace and allow consumers to keep their stuff in use for longer and out of the trash, which will save consumers money and help to reduce harmful electronic waste in our communities. So again, thank you so much for joining us to hear more. After our presenters, we'll also open it up to Q&A. You'll have a chance to ask questions. I'll also note that we're going to record this first section, our presenters, and then we'll stop recording for the Q&A section. So the first thing I'm going to do is hand it over. Now we have Senator Susan Eggman to talk about the importance of this issue.
Thank you very much for inviting me today. And I'm very excited that again this year, I sometimes feel like it's Groundhog Day, right? But we're going to keep doing this till we get it all the way across the finish line. I am very glad that we're going to be working on this right to repair again. I feel like there's new energy this year. And as you know, we've been working on this for the past maybe 5-6 years. And I'm excited to continue to work with Californians Against Waste, with CalPIRG, with iFixit, and really make sure that we get across the finish line this year. So welcome, everybody. And I'm glad that we're all going to be undertaking this again together. And hopefully, like I said, this year's the year. We've seen progress across the country. We want to make sure we get it right in California. And not have to go back and redo things and not just make it a what we say, whitewashing. What do we call about this kind of stuff? I don't know what we call this, greenwashing or I'm not sure what kind of washing we call it, but we know what is truly right to repair when people have the access, people have the tools, people have the schematics that they need to be able to fix things. As we continue to grow the backbone of California with our small independent fix-it places, and also just continuing to reduce the trash that we throw away that can be fixed and used again. So again, welcome. Thank you everybody for continuing to work on this topic, and I look forward to your support on our bill. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for your leadership. And I know that you need to go for a training, but we also, I'll just note, have Logan Hess from Senator Eggman's office who will stay on for the end if folks have questions about the legislation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so next I'm going to hand it over to Kevin O'Reilly. He is the Right to Repair campaign director with US PIRG to speak in more depth on this issue.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. And, thanks to Senator Eggman for continuing to be such a strong champion of repair over, the past half decade or so that we've been really, and she has really been leading on this issue. So what I want to talk about is a few things. First of all, the problem that we're trying to solve here and some of the impacts that happen there, as well as share some updates on things like the New York bill that has passed, recent corporate announcements and agreements that have come forward, and why we still need to pass legislation and continue to push the ball forward on repairs so that we don't end up with, maybe repair washing might be the term. But anyways, to start, right, zooming out, over the past several decades, we've seen manufacturers of devices almost try to make repair a proprietary issue, right? It used to be that when you bought something, if you had a toolbox in the garage, you could go and figure out a way to fix it, right? Think about your car. If you got a flat tire, it wasn't like you had to throw the thing away because you couldn't fix it yourself. But that's what we've seen, right? Alongside the rise of software in nearly everything we use, we've also seen business practices that are anti-repair and prevent users and independent repair technicians from being able to fix their own stuff. And so that's a big problem, because the fact of the matter is, with these software-powered devices, you need software tools to be able to fix them. And as a result, too, we're just throwing away equipment and devices and products that could continue to be used. So, some of the environmental statistics around this are pretty shocking and really frustrating, and show the urgency around this issue. So for one, in the United States, we throw away 416,000 cell phones every single day, right? Which is just a crazy number. But Californians alone throw away 1.1 million tons of electronic waste every single year. So I think that's one of the very obvious products of being able to, not being able to fix your own equipment, is that we're going to have to throw more stuff away. And that's a huge issue in and of itself. But the environmental impacts happen across a product's life cycle, right? It's a matter of when you throw something away and you got to get a new one, that means we have to mine for more material. We need to manufacture it and transport it, which is going to lead to more emissions into the air, into the environment. And so, to give you an example, a single phone produces the planet warming equivalent of 122.7 pounds of carbon dioxide, right? And 295 pounds of raw material. So that's like a 4.6 ounce smartphone, but 295 pounds of raw material. Now, if we were able to hold on to our phones for just 1 year longer on average across the country, that would have the climate benefits of equivalent to taking 636,000 cars off the road. So there's serious emissions impacts here. There's serious waste reduction impacts here. And also, e-waste leaches toxic chemicals into our land, into our water. And so we have a way to reduce that by making sure that our stuff is still in use. And that's what Senator Eggman's bill does, right? It makes sure that the environment exists for folks to be able to fix their stuff, whether they want to do it themselves or they want to take it to an independent repair shop. So that's a requirement to provide the parts, tools, and information, including, repair manuals, diagrams, and software tools necessary to fix our consumer electronics, as well as those electronics that are sold to businesses and schools and the like. So that's what we're trying to get done. And the right to repair movement, first of all, is one that is happening across the country. So last year we saw more than 20 states introduce bills. This year already 15, I think 16 now, with the Senator Eggman's bill being officially filed, are active across the country. And what we saw last year was some really important breakthroughs. For one, the Colorado state legislature and Colorado governor signed a law into effect that gave powered wheelchairs users the ability to fix their own equipment. They have huge, mobility issues there. So we're excited to see that. That was, really led by the disability community. But more importantly, New York passed the world's first electronics right to repair law. This was a huge milestone in the fact that we were able to get something across the finish line. It is now going to be easier for New Yorkers to fix their consumer electronics. And we're really excited about that. But unfortunately, in the process, there were some serious concessions that the governor made to the tech industry and carve-outs that happened that have introduced some loopholes that are concerning about their ability to, really actually be able to fix all of their stuff and what that might mean. So I think, Dan might go into that a little bit deeper about some of the concerns that they saw. But what we're seeing, the top line issue there, right? We're seeing states take action and move this forward. Additionally, we're seeing companies feel the pressure from this movement that's been building over the past 5-10 years and are really acknowledging the fact that that repair is an issue that needs to be addressed, right? And that what they're currently doing is not going far enough. I will note, right? I'm going to talk about Microsoft, about Apple and Samsung, as well as John Deere, but I'll just note across the board, these corporate commitments are not going far enough to make sure that users of equipment have full control over the things that they own. There are significant downsides to each one of them, and unfortunately, that is why we need to continue to push for legislation, but nonetheless shows that this is something that they see as a problem and something that they're trying to get ahead of. So the latest announcement that happened was John Deere signed a memorandum of understanding with the American Farm Bureau Federation, right? And so, while Professor Eggman's bill, or excuse me, Senator Eggman bill, I don't know if you've seen her on the floor. It's like she's teaching a class. Anyways, bad jokes. So, Senator Eggman's bill doesn't address tractors, but farmers have been a huge part of the right to repair movement. And, while this memorandum of understanding that John Deere agreed to doesn't go all the way, it's the latest example of a manufacturer having to change their course on repair because of the power of this movement, because of the tinkerers and the independent repair shops and environmentalists who are part of this movement. They've followed suit basically of Apple and Microsoft, who both made similar commitments about a year prior, who announced, basically self-repair programs that don't go far enough, that aren't really helpful, but nonetheless are, signs of progress and signs that this movement is breaking through. So what we see, and over these years as we've done all this work, we think that California has a chance to really break through when it comes to right to repair, based upon the history of, Senator Eggman's work in the state, but also because of all this momentum that has been building nationally. So last year, Senator Eggman's bill, SB 983, went as far as any electronics right to repair bill had gone before. It was able to pass through the Judiciary Committee and make its way through to appropriations. Unfortunately, that bill did not make it. It was placed on the suspense file and did not make it off of the suspense file. But nonetheless, we're seeing more and more support come from throughout the legislature. And we think that this is the year that we can finally get it through. So one last kind of bit of information that is important, and I think it kind of explains why it's so critical that we do get this through this year, is due to a survey that CalPERC conducted of independent repair shops, right? These are the folks who are fixing phones and laptops, et cetera, maybe in the mall, maybe in a standalone brick and mortar, but local businesses who are keeping their community's devices working. So we surveyed 63 different repair shops across the state. And the first takeaway that we got from this is that these folks are capable, right? 98% of them reported making a fix that their customer, went to the manufacturer for, and the manufacturer said, nope, we can't do that. So these people can do repairs that often the manufacturers aren't doing themselves. They're also often cheaper, right? This is a great way for folks to save money. 100% of the respondents said that they had made fixes for cheaper than the manufacturer had quoted their customer. And we've even done research at CalPERC to show that if, California families opted for repair rather than replacement of certain household items, that they'd be able to save $4.3 billion annually. money is tight, inflation and things like that are serious. And so enabling repair is a good way to help put some money back in folks' pockets. But the problem is that these businesses are very much at risk. So 59% of those repair shops reported that if Right to Repair doesn't pass soon, they may have to close their doors. They are seeing trends of these repair restrictions get worse. Things like parts pairing, which is a regime that we're seeing that is very problematic in the fact that only the manufacturer themselves can authorize a certain part to be installed to a certain phone or laptop, right? Cutting any sort of independent repair out in the process. A lot of these shops think that could force them to close their doors, or at least to be able to serve fewer customers. So, all of that means that if we don't solve this problem, we could see our independent repair shops go, and it could get to the point where we are no longer able to make sure that this technology, these electronics are staying out of landfill and staying in use. So we're really excited about this new bill and the opportunity to continue to make progress in California. We're hoping California can do better than New York because it's California for goodness sake, but really excited and looking forward to working with each of you and your bosses to find a way forward and see how we can make 2023 the year of Right to Repair.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. And again, we'll have a chance to ask questions at the end. So if you've got questions for Kevin, make sure to take note of those and we'll open it up for Q&A. So next I want to hand it to Dan Salzberg. Again, he's the Chief Counsel and Acting Chief of the Office of Technology, Research and Investigation in the Bureau of Consumer Protection at the FTC. So
well, thank you, Jen. Jen, can I share my screen? Is that possible?
Yes. Sandra, can you give screen share access? Looks like you should be able to do that now.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you, Jen, and thanks to all of you for your interest in making sure that consumers have choices when it comes to repairing the things that they own. The screen share working? You can see my slides, okay? Great.
Yeah.
Let me begin with a disclaimer. The views I express are my own, and they're not necessarily those of the Federal Trade Commission or those of any individual commissioner. So I'm going to talk briefly about the FTC. Then I'll give a bit of background on a provision of warranty law that is meant to ensure competition in repair markets. And finally, I'm going to talk about how this provision of warranty law is inadequate and how the Commission studied manufacturers' practices that restrict the ability of consumers and independent repair shops to fix things, and what the Commission concluded. So the FTC is an independent agency. This means that the agency is not directly controlled by the president, and it's therefore designed to be more insulated from politics. The Commission is led by a chair who is one of 5 commissioners who serve 7-year staggered terms. When there's a vacancy on the Commission, the president gets to nominate a new commissioner who must be confirmed by the Senate. And only 3 of the commissioners can be from the president's party. And the president gets to pick one of the commissioners to serve as the chair of the commission. I think, why is any of this important? Well, it's important because I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Nixing the Fix report that the commission issued was a bipartisan report. And it came from a commission that at the time had 2 Republican and 2 Democrat commissioners, but it was a unanimously issued report. So let's turn back the clock to 1975. Congress back then passed a law called the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act. This law, which addresses many things about manufacturers' warranty practices, included a provision called the anti-tying provision. The anti-tying provision prohibits a manufacturer from voiding a warranty just because a consumer has a product maintained or repaired by someone other than the manufacturer's authorized service center. There are only 2 exceptions to this law. First, a manufacturer can require an owner to use a particular article or service if it's provided for free. And second, the commission can issue a waiver to a manufacturer. In the last 40 years, 3 manufacturers have sought waivers from the commission, and all 3 have been denied. So really, it's unless the manufacturer provides a good or service for free, they can't void your warranty if you use a third party. To put this in more concrete terms, the anti-tying provision is the law that says a car manufacturer can't void your warranty if you have your oil changed at Jiffy Lube, or because you have a repair done at an independent repair shop. So back in 1975, warranty tying was the main way that manufacturers would steer consumers to their authorized repair networks. Over the years, though, we've engaged in law enforcement, issued warning letters, launched business and consumer education campaigns aimed at increasing compliance with the anti-tying provision. And yet both businesses violate the anti-tying provision and consumers don't realize that they have this protection. In fact, the compliance with the anti-tying provision is incredibly horrible. A study by US PIRG found that 45 out of 50 manufacturers studied engaged in illegal warranty tying. More importantly, though, warranty tying is not the only way manufacturers restrict consumer repair options. It may have been the primary way back in 1975, but in the last several decades, manufacturers have devised several types of practices that have the effect of limiting competition in repair markets. And it's these practices that have motivated the right to repair movement. In 2019, when commission staff began looking at competition in repair markets, we realized that there had not been a comprehensive study of the types of repair restrictions, the injury caused by repair restrictions, and whether they could be justified as being beneficial to consumers or competition. This comprehensive study that we engaged in and the resulting report to Congress was called Nixing the Fix. We issued requests for comments and a call for empirical research about repair restrictions. We conducted a public workshop, which included panels comprised of security experts, trade associations, consumer advocates, and third-party repairers. And something that may be of interest to you all is that two of our panelists were state senators. One was the self-described most conservative state senator in Minnesota, and the other was a member of the Vermont Progressive Party. Both were sponsors of their state's right to repair bills. And perhaps if there's one issue that can bridge the partisan divide in this country, maybe it's this right to repair. In May 2021, the commission issued its report to Congress. And as I mentioned before, the report was issued unanimously by the 2 Democrats and 2 Republican commissioners. The report identified many types of manufacturer practices that limit the ability of consumers and third-party repairers to fix products. Many of these will be familiar to you just in your daily life. You've probably seen these. And I would note that that California actually had a limited right to repair law in its Salling-Beverly Warranty Act. This provision of Salling-Beverly required manufacturers of certain types of electronic appliance products to make service literature and parts available to service and repair facilities. But a 2016 unpublished case by the Ninth Circuit interpreted this provision to mean that a manufacturer only had to make service literature and parts available to authorized repairers and not to all service and repair facilities. So kind of an interesting thing that you know, one of the things that we noted in our Nixing the Fix report was that 3 states had right to repair laws of some sort on the books: Rhode Island, Indiana, and California. But the California one had been gutted by this unreported federal circuit court decision. So in addition to cataloging the various types of repair restrictions, we also looked at manufacturers' professed justifications for the restrictions. For instance, manufacturers claim that independent repair creates safety risks or can result in cybersecurity issues, such as data theft, or it can result in degrading of their intellectual property rights. The report also evaluated the arguments made by right to repair advocates who claim that broader access to repair parts, tools, and information would enable consumers to get products repaired faster and at a lower cost. We also evaluated the claim that expanded repair options would reduce e-waste and promote local small repair businesses. So what did we find? Well, the commission did not mince words. The report had really 4 major conclusions. The first one was that repair restrictions resulted in products being replaced before the end of their useful lives. The second was that there was scant evidence to support manufacturers' justifications for repair restrictions, including their often hyped claims about the safety and cybersecurity risks associated with independent repairs. The third finding was that opening access to repair parts, documentation, and tools was well supported by the record. And finally, the commission found that the burden of repair restrictions may fall more heavily on communities of color and lower income communities. In terms of next step, the Commission informed Congress that it would consider reinvigorated enforcement, regulatory and law enforcement options, consumer education, and to work with federal and state legislators on their right to repair bills. Since issuing the Nixing the Fix report, the Commission issued a policy statement on right to repair, stating that increasing competition in repair markets was an enforcement priority. And a couple of months ago, in keeping with that policy statement, we announced settlements with 3 companies who were violating the anti-tying provision: Harley-Davidson, Weber Grills, and Westinghouse. And finally, one other public thing that I can talk about is the possibility that we may issue a regulation that would require manufacturers of certain appliances to make maintenance and repair information available to owners. There's a provision, I guess if we turn back the clock again to 1975, in addition to the Magnuson Warranty Act, Congress passed the Energy Policy and Conservation Act. And the EPCA had a provision in it that allows the FTC to require manufacturers of certain products, mainly energy-intensive home appliances, to make repair and maintenance information available to purchasers. To issue such a rule, the law requires that the FTC make 2 findings. First, the information would need to be helpful to consumers when purchasing or using a product. And second, such a requirement would not be unduly burdensome to manufacturers. It is not clear yet if the Commission will engage in such a rulemaking. In fact, the comment period is still open. And even if the Commission did engage in a rulemaking, honestly, it would be very limited. It would apply to a limited class of products and wouldn't require a manufacturer to make parts available, because the law only permits us to require manufacturers to make information available. So thank you again for inviting me to participate. And I look forward to answering any questions you may have during the Q&A period.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. Okay, so then we're going to move to our last speaker. So Professor Aaron Perzanowski, a law professor at the University of Michigan Law School, to talk more about intellectual property. I'll also note he is the author of the book, Right to Repair, which folks can read too. So are you able to join on video too, Aaron?
I think we might be better off without video. I'm at the airport at the moment, and I'm not entirely confident about the quality of the Wi-Fi here. So apologies for being a disembodied
we can hear
voice.
You great.
Good. So thank you all for asking me to speak with you today. It's been great hearing everybody else's perspective so far. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions as well. So I teach and write primarily about intellectual property law. And so I really came to the issue of repair from that perspective. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about kind of the roles that I see intellectual property playing in the repair debate. And there are a couple of different ways that IP gets invoked and deployed here. First, we often have manufacturers asserting and leveraging IP rights as one of the many tools they use to restrict repair. Typically, but not always, but typically I think those claims are pretty weak, and they typically rest on some misinterpretation or overly aggressive interpretation of existing law. And I'm happy to get into the details on that point. The second thing that I see is that IP rights get invoked to persuade lawmakers that right to repair legislation is going to run into some sort of insurmountable federal IP roadblock. And I don't think that's true either. But it's a debate that's worth having. It's a topic worth thinking about, both before and during the process of passing legislation. And to be quite frank with you, it's likely one that we're going to have after legislation passes. I anticipate that there's a reasonable likelihood that we're going to see litigation from manufacturers over state level right to repair bills. And I think it's smart to be prepared for that eventuality. One really important framing at the outset here is to keep in mind that all forms of intellectual property are subject to this principle of exhaustion, or what you might be more familiar with as the for sale doctrine. And the basic idea there is that once you sell a patented or copyrighted or trademarked product, the new owner is free to use it or resell it as they see fit. And that right to use also includes a right to repair. So by definition, IP rights are limited by the property rights of consumers. And that's a really old rule. It goes back to the 1850s when the Supreme Court held that owning a patented device, I'm going to quote the court here, carries with it the right to use that machine so long as it is capable of use. And the court has reaffirmed that basic rule as recently as 2017 in the Lexmark case over refurbished printer ink cartridges. So that right to use includes a right to repair. And that's been recognized in early copyright cases as well. Now, it is worth pointing out that if a particular part of a device is patented, right? Not a patent on the device as a whole, but a particular component of it, either a utility patent or a design patent, that can create problems for independent repair providers. The patent over that part gives the patent holder some degree of power over the price and availability of the part. We've seen that pretty recently with Samsung asserting its patents, I believe at the ITC, trying to block imported third-party phone screens that it claims are covered by its patents. We've seen that in the automotive space with design patents over headlamps and other components, right? So there are some areas where IP does create an important barrier to repair, and we should be mindful of that. We get a lot of arguments, or I hear a lot of arguments around trade secrets. Firms claim, let's be honest, firms claim all sorts of things are trade secrets, and that doesn't make them trade secrets. They say they're manuals, that diagnostic information, that schematics, that repair techniques are all trade secrets. And this is a recurring problem in trade secrecy law. These claims are vague, they're untested, and they're really hard to get a handle on exactly what the claim secret is from the outset. But a lot of the information at issue in the repair space is either generally known or readily ascertainable, which really undermines the claim that these are protectable secrets in the first place. It's also important to remember that reverse engineering is lawful under trade secrecy law. So if you can discover this information through reverse engineering, you are generally going to be in the clear. We also have repair information that's often being shared with lots of third parties, right? Lots of authorized repair providers who may or may not be under legal obligations to maintain their secrecy, who may or may not be living up to those obligations, and all of that's going to jeopardize the legal status of those purported secrets. Also, to be blunt about it, just because a company wants to treat something as a secret doesn't mean the law ought to let them. There are lots of examples of areas where the law compels disclosure of information that companies would rather not disclose. Financial disclosures, clinical trials, nutritional information. That's all information that a lot of companies would rather keep to themselves, right? I'm sure the people that make Oreo cookies would prefer, I don't know how many calories are in them, right? But we make them disclose that information anyway. On the copyright side of things, we've seen companies in the past try to control their part numbering systems through copyright law. Courts have pretty roundly rejected that. We see other companies try to assert copyright in their repair manuals. That actually came up when iFixit created this medical device repair database, which had something like 13,000 manuals for ventilators and other medical equipment during the pandemic. But there are good reasons in copyright law to be very skeptical of those claims. Most of the information in a repair manual is either not subject to copyright protection at all or subject to very, very thin copyright protection. We're talking about manuals that describe in sort of very terse terms how to remove and replace a particular component. I would argue that that's not copyrightable in the first place, and we've got a fair amount of precedent to back that up. We get into some trickier territory when it comes to software, diagnostic tools, part authentication software. Those things can be protected by copyright, although arguably the functional work that they do might fall outside of the scope of copyright protection. A lot of that software is protected by some sort of digital lock, some digital rights management system. But the US Copyright Office has determined on multiple occasions now that bypassing DRM to access software for the purposes of repair does not violate copyright law. Repair is not an infringing activity, and it is lawful to break that DRM if it's interfering with your ability to repair a huge range of products now. Not every single product, right? They haven't applied this to passenger jets or cruise ships or other kinds of transportation, but automobiles and tractors and consumer electronics and phones, a whole bunch of things are covered by those exemptions. So from my perspective, we ought to understand and apply IP rights pretty narrowly when it comes to their impact on repair. One argument I hear a lot is that, well, look, IP is necessary to drive investment in the creation of new products. And if you interfere with IP, then you're going to interfere with those incentives. Repair restrictions don't drive real innovation. If anything, they slow it down. If you can keep cashing in by reselling minor variations of the same product year after year after year, an iPhone that's a millimeter thinner, an iPhone that now comes in purple or green, that's not innovation, right? That's product differentiation. You get incentives to really create something new when you have to find a new market, when you have to create a new product category. And right now, I think a lot of companies just don't have those sorts of incentives. I also want to address this argument that state level right to repair laws are somehow in conflict with or preempted by federal IP law. I'm not here to tell you how a court would ultimately rule on that question. I think it's dangerous without a lot of information and a lot of context and a specific bill and a specific plaintiff in front of you. But I find those arguments generally pretty weak. Facilitating repair is consistent with federal IP policy, both on the copyright and patent side of the equation. The Copyright Act prohibits states from enacting exclusive rights that are in the language of Section 301 of the Copyright Act equivalent to those provided under federal law. But state right to repair laws do not establish exclusive rights, nor do they authorize third parties, for example, to reproduce or distribute copyrighted material. The copyright owner is the party who is, who is required or permitted to take those steps under these laws. Now, there's also this idea of implied preemption. And one of the key standards for implied preemption is if it's impossible for a private party, in this case, the manufacturer, to simultaneously comply with both state and federal law. Sometimes courts talk about whether or not the state law stands as an obstacle to the accomplishment of the purposes and objectives of Congress, right? If those things are true, then a state law can be preempted. But here, there is no difficulty that manufacturers face in complying with both federal IP law and state right to repair laws. Copyright law doesn't create some sort of barrier from making these software tools available to consumers or to repair providers. And in fact, manufacturers are already making those tools available to their authorized repair partners, right? The question is whether a manufacturer could independently do under federal law what the state law requires it to do. And I think the answer there is clearly yes. On the patent side of things, preemption doesn't fare much better. Again, as I said, keep in mind, this is a 150-year-old policy of allowing repair in the patent context. Repair restrictions are what is contrary to patent policy in the United States. The other thing to keep in mind is the vast majority of parts are not patented. Sure, some parts are, but even if we limited the effect of the law to unpatented component parts, that still has a major impact on improving repair. This is a few decades old now, right? But when Kodak was sued for restricting repair of copy machines, they raised this argument, said, well, what about our patents? And the court said there are thousands of parts that make up these machines. 65 of them are patented. This is not a major obstacle as I see things here. So, we're not talking about laws that require the device maker to permit third parties to manufacture and sell replacement parts. I might be in favor of a bill that did that, but that's not what these bills do, right? They're more modest in their scope. If you gave third parties the rights to manufacture and distribute patented parts, yeah, I think we run into a real preemption problem there. But again, that's not what these bills are trying to accomplish. It's also worth pointing out that other states, right? We talked a little bit earlier about the Song-Beverly Act in California, and despite that one unpublished opinion, which I think pretty badly botches the statutory analysis, we have not seen a challenge to the Song-Beverly Act saying that it is preempted by federal IP law. We have a Massachusetts auto repair bill that's been on the books since 2012, and no one has successfully challenged that as preempted, even though it requires sharing of software, sharing of parts, right? So those are, I think, my key points on the IP side of things. I also really quickly want to touch on a few issues surrounding security, because this is also something that comes up a lot. We hear a lot of scary stories about the ways that independent repair might jeopardize security and privacy. I think the first thing to understand there is that the security mechanisms that protect device security and user privacy are typically not the same digital locks that restrict repair. So unlocking one doesn't do anything to unlock the other. And if for some reason those systems are not distinct and are all covered by the same lockout systems or security mechanisms, I think that's a major failure on the part of the manufacturer, right? That is a bad way to design your product, and we shouldn't be encouraging companies to do things that way. Second, there is no reason to think that authorized repair shops provide any more security or any more protections for user privacy than independent shops do. Apple's biggest partner when it comes to authorized repair is Best Buy. I would trust an independent small business owner who I interact with face to face when I drop off my phone a lot more than I would, the anonymous part-time teenage employee at the local Best Buy. And so, this is not a choice between these sort of unknown shadowy figures and these like carefully vetted, repair experts who value privacy and security. The last thing I'll say, and I appreciate your indulgence, I'm sure I'm going on too long here, but the last point is, if we're worried about malicious hackers, they don't need access to repair tools if they want to access your device or your data. They have way more sophisticated techniques, way more sophisticated tools at their disposal. And if a device or a system is insecure, locking down repair doesn't do anything to solve those underlying security flaws. And so I think we need to shift that responsibility back onto manufacturers rather than blaming repair for these theoretical security risks. So I will stop there and look forward to the conversation to follow.
Thank you so much, Karen. Okay, so now we're going to open it up to the Q&A. And before we do that, I also just wanted to acknowledge a few other folks that are part of the webinar too, that are available for questions. So we have Liz Chamberlain. She's the Director of Sustainability for iFixit, which is a California company that runs essentially the Wikipedia for repair how-tos and is a co-sponsor of the legislation, as well as Clara Vivex, who's a policy analyst with Californians Against Waste, also a co-sponsor of the bill. And then again, Logan Hess is here. He is the legislative director for Senator Eggman, who can answer questions about the specific bill. So I think the best way to ask questions is through the Q&A feature, and then we can read them out loud too. And if you have a question for a particular person, great to indicate that, or we can definitely just open it up. The first question is if there is a one-pager from Eggman's office on the bill. I'll let you take that, Logan.
Thanks, absolutely. We have a fact sheet available. So feel free to email me if you would like a copy of that. And I think we already said the bill's been introduced as SB 244.